Welcome back to another episode of When Destiny Calls. I am Dr. Lahab Al-Samarrai, and this is Christy Foster, and today we have a very special guest. Effie is with us, and she is Christy's sister, but she's also a mother. And Effie is going to talk to us about disabilities. What it is, how do we understand it, and how it affects us in our existence. We all have a certain disability. We are all disabled in a certain way, but there are some things that hinder us from movement or our physical limitations or our mental limitations. So we're going to be talking about that. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Christy and Dr. Lahab, for having me here today. I'm really excited to kind of dig into these conversations that I have with families like mine every single day. My name's Effie Parks. I live in Seattle, Washington with my husband and my two kiddos. My 5-year-old son, Ford, was born with a rare neurological disorder called CTNNB1. It was a random mutation. It's not something that was hereditary or passed down. It's just something that can happen when you have a little kiddo. And that was a big shock to my family in so many ways. Lots of expectations that were lit on fire, and then just kind of constant stress and fear and navigating a world, raising a medically complex kid without having any experience in the matter.
Both psychologically, emotionally, and physically, because all those things are required to take care of a child. You are on call 24 hours a day. Without anything, you are on call.
Yeah, absolutely. I describe it a lot to people as being constantly vigilant. So your brain doesn't ever really turn off, and you're never off duty unless you really put things in place and boundaries in place and self-care practices in place that are habits daily to find those moments where you can have that personal time, right, to your own emotional well-being. But that's really difficult. And I've also found that most people don't really come to this situation of, rare disease and disability with coping skills that are exactly tailored to this type of life. I mean, why would you?
Yeah, so you bring up a lot of issues. One of them is the hypervigilance, which is basically your body is under extreme stress all the time. And when you're hypervigilant, your body is in fight and flight mode. And in fight and flight mode, your body is very, very tense and hyperactively aware of its surroundings. And what that causes is it causes stress on the heart. It causes stress on the kidneys, on the liver. It causes stress everywhere. But even our internal processes are stressed out. So food doesn't digest very well. Physically, I have more aches and pains, and I'm stressed. I'm stressed because I'm tired, because fight or flight mode is activation. It's when the sympathetic nervous system is activated and on alert. So it's difficult to deactivate this. So you crash, I'm guessing, when you sleep. You don't really sleep, you crash. And then you wake up like out of the darkness.
Yeah, yes to all of that. And there's also another layer to that. When you said crash, it makes me think of the appointments, right, that you're anticipating for your child. Say there's a upcoming surgery or even like an upcoming IEP, and you're so involved and you are constantly thinking about how afraid you are, how nervous you are, how hard it is to even get to these appointments, how scary it is for your child to have this procedure, and you're so, involved with that, and then you get to the appointment and you finish it, and the crash after that, like how you feel when you finally did another hard thing, it's almost like tenfold of what it does to your body. And then you're still not sleeping.
But what happens is the fight or flight mode, the sympathetic nervous system can't hold it forever. And so it'll hold it until your task is done. And then as soon as it's done, it could be at the end of the task, you start to feel like you can't hold it anymore. You're just falling. And it's a physical falling. It's like nothing is holding the way you should. Nothing is moving the way you should, because you are amped up. So your conscious state is that you are much more agitated than your regular state, but you're not in your regular state. So you're always in this altered state. And that's what you're coming down from. So the first part of the trauma is that nobody prepares you for the unknown. That's destiny. Destiny shows up. If karma shows up, nothing happens. Everything goes as planned. But when destiny shows up, destiny says, oh, your child is going to have neurological difficulties and you're going to be appointed for life. Now, part of that is too much to handle. So this is where the trauma comes in. It's too much. Mm-hmm. So you focus on one aspect of it. You focus on the aspect of making sure they're okay, which means that you disassociated your feeling state. Like, I can't think about this, so I'm going to push that aside. The problem with that is that that feeling state is what connects you to everything,
Oh yeah,
part of everything.
Yeah, that's the dissociative. Man, I can't even say it. Disassociation part of it is constant too. Yeah. It's definitely something I know I've practiced, especially in the beginning of this. I flew down to Salt Lake City to see Christy because for the first time I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was choking. Like if my eyes were closed, I know there was a scarf around my neck strangling me, because I was just going and going and trying to deal, and I wasn't feeling how much grief I was enveloped in. I wasn't doing all of those things, right? Like I wasn't giving my body any permission to feel, and that started taking over.
You weren't speaking. That's why you were choking. You weren't saying anything.
Totally.
I think there was
that would be shameful.
Yeah, a lot of guilt involved in that.
Well, yeah, and it's also like everyone around you is always like, you're so strong. Ford chose the right mom. You're the best. Like, you got this. And it's like, oh, so I can't suck at this. I can't hate this. This is the worst, but I'm strong. So I better just pull up my big girl pants. Which, yeah, I am strong. I am all those things, but I'm also completely horrified and sad.
Well, then, you become superhuman. So you become supermom. You're no longer a human being. You've been associated with the gods on Mount Olympus, and therefore you have to take that part. And part of you is activated in that way. My child needs help. So part of you is already activated. It's activated archetypally. You are the mother savior. You're activated that way. So once you're activated that way, you want to move that way. The problem is that if you don't breathe or speak or say, oh my God, I can't take this shit anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a week off. If there's if you don't feel any freedom to have a voice, that's when you start choking to death.
Yeah. And I didn't say earlier, but I know that's one of the reasons that the specific area of podcasting became a part of my life, because
Mm,
Christy explained to me that I wasn't speaking and I wasn't using my voice.
mm,
And so I started this podcast to find my people and to be a home base for people who are raising kids like mine, because there wasn't anywhere for us to go. There
mm.
wasn't anywhere for us to just talk to each other and tell the world what we were going through without it being some random post on the internet that maybe someone sees and doom scrolls by.
Well, tell us about your podcast, because we'll air this on your podcast also. So tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, I host a podcast called Once Upon a Gene.
Mm.
It's a place for patients, caregivers to share their stories and their resources about raising kids who have rare genetic syndromes and chronic illness. And it's a magical place. I think it has a special energy that I can't really explain. It's brought me so much connection and comfort, and I learn something every day, and I have people that I can go to ask the questions that I need answered, and to just have general solidarity sometimes in the moments. It's a way to spread awareness and really connect people that are outside of our rings, to give them a window into what our life is really like, and to not put a curtain around disability as much as there was and still is, you know. I didn't know anything about kids like Ford. I wasn't raised with kids like Ford. I didn't go to school with kids like Ford. I was terrified of the word disabled and like what that meant. And there's like a great big world of the most amazing people who are just changing the world. And I want to be a part of giving that voice and changing the world for kids like my son Ford, because it's just such a disservice to our world that it has been hidden and that it has been taboo.
Well, you and your community are activated by the archetypal energies very early on. You're very identified with the archetype. You're very identified with the supreme structure that gives us everything that we are, everything that it intuits us to be. So what you notice is that before you had your son, you were terrified of this idea. This idea was needed to stay away, far away from consciousness. And then that idea transformed. It transformed because of the activation of the archetype. You were activated. You were activated into service. You don't. So part of it is you're activated by the trauma. The other part is you're activated by the archetype, and the archetype is of service. It's the savior archetype. It's the archetype of I am not gonna let you be anything but you. And that's the ultimate identification of the archetype. The power of it, the energy of it. And that's what pushes you through. That's the archetypal energy. You're seeing that more in yourself. You're identifying it as things that you could do that you weren't able to do. You probably think about yourself in different ways that you never thought about before.
Absolutely.
Christy did.
Yeah, just noticing you, Effie, since Ford was diagnosed, and watching you through the process of day to day. I don't like the word acceptance comes to my brain, but that isn't what I'm saying. The day to day acknowledgement of what is. And and how difficult, in my observation, that has been. And then even just seeing you when you came to Salt Lake City and I saw you, the amount of energetic weight in your field and in your body that was so real that you weren't aware of. I think the gift that you bring to people is the awareness that that's real, that heaviness within people's physical body, in the psyche, you look great, you look fine, and then there's that piece. And I think that's a difficult part too with a kid with disability, is that part that people can't see, that you feel and you sleep with every night and you battle with. That's the gift that I see you giving people, is the reality check that it never stops.
Oof.
And putting a voice to something that has so much, there's such a funny, like a guilt and shame around being angry that it's there, and actually voicing, saying this is so shitty, and not feeling guilty that it's shitty, because it is shitty. But there's a line that people, what I've noticed, don't like to cross in the acknowledgement of how difficult it is. They like to put some frosting on it and make it look different. And that's what I love about you, Effie, is you're able to bring to light what has been hidden in the shadows about a child with disabilities, and give a voice to that shadow.
Thank you. I've had a good teacher. It came from a place where you and mom talked about this stuff, right? And this is a new concept for so many people in my life, even, and parents who are raising medically complex kids. And you bring up guilt and shame, which are two of the things I hear all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for us to put that out there, right? Like, I am envious of you. I am jealous of you. I am so angry at this. When I find now that I just say those things and I have that, and I'm not being vindictive or, wishing ill upon anyone, but when I actually get to own those feelings, it's easier. And then sometimes they just go away. But when I keep stewing on them, or if I let them keep me up at night, that's when things like getting harder to breathe starts. And all of that stuff.
That's very real. That's that density of energy that you're articulating, that I see in my practice with people, is, and it will be language as it feels so heavy. And I think bringing a voice to that part, the part that we can't see, matters, because it helps you feel less crazy, because there is nothing sitting on your chest, and yet there is. And there is nothing choking you, and yet there is. And so that's why it's so important to talk about the reality of having a child with disability. How does it show up first, so we can identify what it feels like and looks like and sounds like. And then I think from there we can actually talk about, okay, now what do we do with this? How can we better manage? Because the child's not going away. You still have it 24/7. Now, what can we do to manage ourselves better and regulate our nervous system so we can face another day or another hour?
Yeah, that reminds me, the other day I asked my followers where they feel like their trauma and their stress shows up in their body. And Dr. Lahab, you said earlier that you don't digest food as well. And I think the one that had the most answers was that people's stomach hurt.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think, I mean, obviously the people that answered sees that about themselves, but I don't think a lot of parents and people in general recognize that physical ailments or problems, with their health are caused by this type of thing.
Well, they can't stomach it, right? It's not stomachable. It's not something that you could sit on. It's not something you could sit with. It's not, because it's a trauma. That's why the trauma has to be treated. So my recommendation to you and to your community is that treatment would be optimal for trauma. And I'll be more specific. It's the trauma when you got the news. That's the trauma that has to be treated before anything else. That specific trauma of getting the news, how you heard the news, because that is the operating trauma. That is the trauma that you operate from. That's the trauma that gives you a feeling that something is sitting on your chest, that something is keeping you from breathing. That's the trauma. That trauma has to be treated because the event exists. So to normalize the event, we have to treat the trauma. That's what's needed. That means self-care. That means seeing somebody for trauma. Because then I am still going to do all the things that I have to do. But now that feeling in the stomach, that feeling in the chest, that feeling around the throat is no longer making me suffer. This is a reality I've embraced, but I don't need to suffer in the reality. Unfortunately, many of you are suffering in the reality because for whatever reason, the suffering in the reality is part of probably of the shame that is felt. Like I have to feel something. I have to be. But for you to be most effective is for you to feel comfortable in your own skin. And the only way to do that is to get the trauma treated. So what happens is the trauma is like several explosions, right? Now, you could talk about it more, but I'll describe it theoretically. It's like a explosion goes off in front of you, and then all these other explosions start until one big explosion, and then you can't think. Then everything goes blank.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, didn't happen. Didn't happen.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring it up as the delivering of the news and that's the event. Because we talk a lot about D-Day, Diagnosis Day, and the bad news room. And that's where it is. That's where it all starts. But then we suffer in it, right? Continuously. But it is from those few moments, from that call, from
Absolutely.
that email, from that bad newsroom, that is where you almost like left your body and you were like watching it happen.
Well, you called it D-Day, right? I didn't know that they called it D-Day, but that makes perfect sense. I mean, this is, it's a massive trauma. It was like I was describing it as many different explosions. That's D-Day. That's explosion after explosion after explosion that went on throughout, that continued to go on, that continued to happen. Those explosions, those traumas continued to move ahead. So for you, let's talk about you. How did you experience that day?
Man.
Can you talk about
Yes.
it? Breathe first. Breathe.
It was a little bit about being outside of my body. And I also explain it as being the closest thing to a car accident. I've been in a lot of car accidents that rolled over
Mm,
And when the car rolls over, it is like a movie. Everything is in the slowest of motion that you could imagine,
mm,
that you could see a gum wrapper in the air and watch it roll by.
mm.
And it's quiet, like you hear nothing. You don't hear glass breaking and you don't hear crashing. You just watch and everything is swirling around you and you're just there. And that's exactly what happened to me in that moment. I remember my mother-in-law was listening to the appointment and she was taking notes and she just kept retracing CT and NB1. She just kept writing over it and making it bolder and bolder and bolder while she was listening. And I remember like heat and darkness just kind of like closing in on me. It was kind of claustrophobic.
Mm.
And then I forgot what happened. Like I forgot everything after it. I don't remember days after it. I remember my little sister coming over. She lives a couple hours away and she drove down and she like just held me and she watched my baby. And I don't have a lot of memories from a few days after that.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize that I didn't have a lot of memories until later, that I couldn't recall anything from watching her scribble that and everything going in slow motion to maybe even months after that.
Mm.
And there was no answer, right? It was, sorry, we don't have any information to give you,
Mm.
you know, go give your son therapy and good luck.
Mm.
And so it was like I was abandoned by the medical system, who I thought was going to be like the answer.
No, they traumatized you and they cut you loose.
Yeah, they totally cut me
Yeah.
loose.
Yeah, it's
And
like, oh,
they
here's
told
the
me,
diagnosis. Now go do your thing. I
Yes.
don't know what to do with you.
Yeah, so I felt like maybe my son's disease wasn't as important as it needed to be,
Mm.
even though it was quite the opposite, right? And I don't know, I've never experienced anything quite like it. And the more I think about it, the more I wish I could remember, and maybe just for the fact of things I could have done differently sooner.
Well, you should. We'll take you through jam treatment because that will help reconnect you to those memories, because you were old enough and you were conscious enough to regain them. You weren't. Uh, you weren't too young. You weren't. It wasn't a physical trauma where you got hit in the head. So you should be able to recall these in the jam treatment. In the jam treatment, these memories, and specifically what happened those days after, you were conscious of. You just disassociated. You should be able to get back to those. But the most important part is that you're able to get back to the person you were before you were traumatized.
That would feel good.
Yeah,
Feels
that
so
feeling
good.
state. I'm not talking about the conscious state. No, your conscious state is transformed. It's a very different one. But I'm talking about that feeling state that you had that wasn't disrupted. That feeling state of, the world was one place. That feeling state. Like I was in the world and the world was one place. That feeling state. Because it's important to take care of yourself, right? Self-care is really important because you're taking care of somebody else all the time. So if you don't take care of yourself, that's just more pain. And that's more anguish and more despair. And that's not okay. We don't have to live this way. We can live better. There's hope. There's treatment. And I think that's the underlying thing that I want to give you and your listeners, that there's treatment. So we should not take care of ourselves. We shouldn't feel shame about being the caregiver. The caregiver requires a lot, and they deserve a lot. You know, my mom passed away about 20 years ago, but to this day, when I remember her, it brings tears to my eyes. She was the caregiver, you know, and somehow I felt like I didn't acknowledge the job that she did all the time. So when she left, I felt like I didn't acknowledge her enough. But this is the people who carry on all these tasks that don't seem to be issues in society, but these are constant tasks. These are picking up always, cooking always, taking care of always, washing, cleaning, doing what you need to do always, right? So you carry a lot of weight. And so
Oh,
feeling
yeah.
good is primary for you. So you can continue to do what you have promised yourself you're going to do. I'm sure you've made a lot of promises to yourself as part of
Yeah.
coping.
Yeah, I would love it if you would actually talk about that a little more, because what I hear from caregivers is two things. I don't have time to figure out what self-care means to me. I don't know what it is. And two,
Mhm.
I feel guilty for taking care of myself over my kid.
You can't take care of anybody if you start to break down. The care that you're giving is minimal, and it's not helping the other person because they could see that you're in pain.
Mhm.
These kids are very attuned to you as much as you are attuned to them. You hear their heartbeat, they hear your heartbeat. Just remember, you've been in a tango since the news broke out, you and this child. And you've been dancing the tango for a long time. You know every move, they know every move. They know your face, they read it on your face. And when you're unhappy, it doesn't make them feel good. If you're tired and exhausted, it's not going to let them feel good. And knowing that the caregiver, the most important thing to them is that the person that they care for is feeling good. This is why they need to take care of themselves. Because then then they're really doing their job. That's the job they promised themselves. That's the job they keep telling themselves, this is my job. Well, then you have to take care of yourself, because you can't do that job if you don't. You can't. You're going to get sick. You're going to start to physically break down. And if you physically break down, you're not going to be able to care for anybody. Right? So that's what I would recommend. I would recommend that you take, a jam treatment is 90 minutes. You could fit in 90 minutes during your week. Somewhere you could fit in 90 minutes for yourself. Somebody can give you a break for 90 minutes.
Yeah, I joke seriously that I'm more important than Ford. Because I see
Absolutely. He does not exist. He does not exist. So all parents like you have to think this way, because this child needs them, needs you. So you are primary.
Yeah, if I get dysregulated and I am stressed about something and I've been letting it go on, I can see it almost immediately in my kids, almost immediately. And I'm like, big red fire truck, Effie, they are feeling everything that you're feeling right now, and you're off balance. And this is only going to make everything worse.
Yeah, it's hard. You need to be able to feel good. Well, there's only so much you could do. You are not created in a way that all you do is care for other. You're human. You have needs, you have wants, you have feelings. You get tired, you get exhausted, you get overwrought. You want to be taken care of. You want to be taken out. You want somebody to make you dinner. You want somebody to. So these things need to take place. This is self-care. Now, they maybe not, you can't make them like as part of your week because you have so many things to do, but you need to allocate days in the week for yourself. You need to be able to take breaks. You're not good if you're not functioning. You're not good if you're not happy. You're not good if you're not healthy, and you're not good when you are stressed out. You're just not good.
Amen. And there's a lot of hats to wear, and I can tell when I'm not giving the energy and attention to things, and I'm just parsing it out, and
Yeah.
nothing's getting filled up the way that it should be because I'm not
Because
running on.
you haven't taken care of self.
Yeah. You can
Because
tell, you
let
can see.
self fall apart.
Yeah. What is it about trauma that is so painful and sticks in your body? And like when you do things like gem therapy, somatic therapy, does it go away? Do you just get good at noticing what it is and how to take care of it? What is it about trauma therapy that helps you move forward?
With JAM, with Young and Advanced Motor Processing, I could tell you, and Christy can tell you, it goes away. And the way it goes away is that you don't have that nagging presence. You don't have the elephant sitting on your chest. You don't have the hands around your neck. No longer are you waiting or noticing, are they there or not? Am I feeling okay? I could breathe. They are not there anymore because those are originally part of the trauma. That's what you were thinking to yourself. I can't breathe. So that became part of the trauma. So it's dissociated. It's like, boom, D-Day. There goes the bomb. Oh, I don't know that. I saw things flying around. So that stays. So when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling tired, it comes back. Now I can't breathe. Why can't I breathe? Because I'm stressed and because the trauma's coming back. Because the original event hasn't been resolved. I have not been able to stomach it, to digest it. And therefore, I can't digest and stomach food. I don't like food. Food is also a process of love, right? It's life-giving, nurturing. Well, then it doesn't feel like it anymore. It's like, well, I didn't feed them well. There's something defective about my physical being that caused this. And thus it's my fault. And that's where the shame comes in. But this is insane, of course. This is an insane idea. It's not true. Right? Because a large part of the process, nobody really understands. Well, they could tell you, but there's a large part of the process. The alchemy of the process, they don't understand. Right? How is this child autistic? Or how does it? They try to, maybe the mother did this. Maybe she took this medication. Maybe it's a guessing game, which means they don't know. So blaming yourself that it was your defect that caused the defect is probably quite pervasive in your community.
Oh yeah.
And this is piece and parcel of the trauma. Because I need to understand why this happened to me. So then you start to try to reason with trauma.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's
Reason
what
with trauma.
Well, that's what you do. You try to make reason out of it. Well, it must have happened. When I was 6, I hit somebody with a stick. I don't know what happened to that person. I caused them so much pain. That's why I had my child, and my child is like that. The mother is going to be held more she's going to hold herself more at fault.
Yeah.
Than the father.
All true. Yeah.
Or the partner. If it's not a father, the partner. The mother
Very
is going to
common.
hold herself very, very much at fault. This is a deficit, a defect. It's amazing that we walk on this planet anyway with 2 feet. It is. It's quite amazing. I mean,
It is.
because we are naturally so stupid. I mean, it's a bit because we blame ourselves for everything. Like, we have control over everything. Like, everything is under our power, and we have like imaginary invisible buttons that we could push, and everything is going to kind of fold and walk in a certain direction. And we're going to have the child who's going to liberate nations, and they're going to walk and they're going to throw flowers at them. But this is part of the imagination of having a child. So that's part of the trauma.
Yep, Ford did all of those things before he was born.
The creation of this child. This child is going to be. This is the creation, and now the creation has blown up in my face. And
Totally.
this is part of the anguish of the mother, because she's the creator, right? So of course I'm going to hold myself responsible. Who else am I going to hold responsible? I am the creator.
Yes, all of that. And everybody's like, yep. I mean, that's just it. It exists. It exists for people who didn't have a hereditary thing that they passed down. It exists for the ones that did and didn't know about it. It exists in all aspects like that, because you brought this human into the world, this beautiful person, and you wonder what went wrong. And you must have done something.
I think that your ability to imagine everything that happened to you, your ability to seek treatment, should be part of imagination. Excuse me for a second. Christy, take over for a second.
All right. As I'm listening, Effie, and sometimes I think it sounds, theoretically, it sounds like it all makes sense, especially when trauma is spoken about. And I do think there are ways to take the charge out of that. And it's I just want to say to people that, because what I keep hearing in my head is, yeah, that sounds easy, but how do you do that? And yeah, that sounds easy, but you don't know what that's like. And it creates another loop within the psyche of keeping oneself stuck with the trauma, because it is so vast that it's difficult to come out of it, because there's not even a thought that you could come out of it, because you're looking at your little Ford every day going, there it is again. And so what I hear Dr. Lahab talking about is, if trauma is something that we can take from 100% down to 50%. That's significant in functioning every day as a mother again, and taking a shower and eating something and or drinking less and or scrolling less. What is it that are the coping skills that are happening that you've been doing to regulate your nervous system to unplug, because you're plugged into that original trauma? And so it becomes this dance back and forth. And I think trauma is extremely complex. We're certainly having a conversation about it. And I also think it has and needs to have a healthy respect, that it isn't logical, it's not linear, and there are ways to what's the word I'm wanting when you disengage a bomb? There's a word for that. Disarm a bomb, because it's so powerful. It literally does the living of oneself until it can be disarmed to a degree that you can function better, you can begin to integrate and feel even in your body what's happening once a day. Because I would bet a lot of this, I'm certainly generalizing, but a lot of parents with children with disabilities, when it reminds me of a client that I had, her child did have that, and I was talking about breath, and she goes, well, where can I buy that? It was because it's so foreign to someone that is constantly on. They don't, what the hell are you talking about? What is breath? And so I'd really like to emphasize that it's and honor the space, that it isn't as simple as talking about it. There are processes like what Dr. Lahab is talking about with JAMP, a process he developed to help disengage that energy within the psyche and at the body, and that is really the window to feeling your breath. That's the window to going, oh, I can do this another hour, because that's such a big deal.
Oh my gosh, Christy, you explained that perfectly. And I want to put a pin in the fact that even going down to 50% of feeling your trauma response is a significant impact in your well-being. When you got my breath cleared to where I could take a deep breath without feeling choked and without feeling like I couldn't even open my lungs, while I still feel so many things, and sometimes that comes back depending on where I'm at, my life's changed significantly for the better, and I was able to tackle things and think through things and regulate myself more easily. But to also, what you said, just be more aware, even if it's once a day, going, it's here. I feel like when you're in the thick of it and when you're in it deep, you can't even do that.
It's impossible, because it's in charge. It's like trauma becomes its own entity. And it's crazy to explain, and that unless you've been in that, Effie, like with your own situation, everyone that is in your world can relate to that, because it's so crazy making. And I mean, part of the reason why we're doing this podcast is to open a window for 10%, for 20% of a breath, to go, oh my God, I didn't realize that I was breathing. I didn't realize that my breath was not there. So to the listeners, just understanding that is real, and that there's hope for a percentage of being able to go back to what you might used to have felt before the trauma happened.
The treatment resolves the trauma. So I could make that statement. The treatment itself resolve the traumatic pain of the trauma, the pain that the trauma inflicts upon you all the time, that pain is removed because you're able to connect the pieces of the trauma to your feeling state. Oh my God, can I do this? Split off, disassociated. That comes back. Oh yeah, I said that to myself. Of course I could do this. Look at me now. So what you're doing is now you're able to be who you were feeling state-wise before this occurrence. Certain things remain because the trauma is not the child. That needs to be resolved. That's part of the resolution of the trauma, is to disconnect the child from the trauma. They did not cause the trauma. The event occurred because of the news that came in. So being able to pull these things apart through the treatment is, and being able to integrate them. So the bilateral sound and the light help synchronize the right and left hemisphere. The right hemisphere is the old emotional center. It evolves way before the left hemisphere. It's the old emotional center. It holds all of our pain, our anguish, our fear, our love, when they're disconnected, all we hear is I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm irritated. I start to see things like bad things, or remember things that were bad or uncomfortable, or so the treatment, what it does is it helps connect the conversation between the right and left. And therefore, the disconnected parts start reconnecting. And suddenly I have a story. I was at the hospital. Oh, that nurse was so rude. Oh, that doctor, he did not have any professional manners. He just blurted it out. It just came out of his mouth like it was nothing to him. And suddenly you start to realize the conscious state that you were in, right? And suddenly these things no longer have that hold. You see the explosions for what they were. It was shocking news that you couldn't have imagined. And that's what came. And so now it's a very different thing. I have my child who has a disability, or a medical complex disability. But I also have me. I've regained me. I brought her back. You know.
I don't even know if people remember who they were before these kids. I
Yeah,
don't know if people remember what that would even be like to go back to that feeling state
yeah.
before
Yeah.
being traumatized. I'm not sure anyone thinks it might even be different at this point. Like,
We
I'm
would
still
be
going to feel this
happy-
way. What are you talking about?
We would be happy to illustrate. So we'll start with you. So we're going to sign you up for a treatment. We're going to sign you up for a treatment. We're going to work on that particular trauma. And then we're going to have you back in after you've worked on that trauma to ask you how you're feeling. If anything has changed, if it's all the same. So that way you can explain, because my understanding of, I don't have a child with a disability. I have a uncle who, my cousin has Down syndrome. So I've taken care of him for long periods of time. I know how much work and I know how much his mother was traumatized by it. So, and I saw her for years living with the trauma. And what happened is that it took over most of her existence. It made her very bitter, made her very angry. It made her a person that was hard to be around because she was so angry all the time. And the child was very happy, but she was angry. So I know what it means to treat trauma, and what it's like not to carry it with you, because when you carry it with you, it's always screaming at you. Like, so Christy, if she doesn't mind, I'm going to give her as an example of the treatment. She doesn't clear her throat anymore. Have you noticed that? She used to do that constantly. Yeah. That was a constant thing. Like, she couldn't speak without clearing her throat. That was a constant thing. That, which we could think of as a tick or something, but she thought maybe it was an irritation, but this is part of the trauma. We don't notice it. Why am I clearing my throat all the time? Oh, I don't need to clear my throat. But now we don't even think about it. Her wrist used to hurt. How's your wrist, Christy?
It's much better. It goes in and out just because of my work. And I noticed though, when I notice now, if I'm not taking care of myself emotionally, it hurts more. So there's so many things that I noticed that I wasn't aware of before.
These are small things. These are small things, but your wrist, you were ready to have surgery on.
Yeah, I was when I first saw you.
Yeah. That's what it resolves. So these things that we're holding, so they become, Christy could tell you about it. This is what she treats all the time. They become parts of us that we don't even notice that it's actually emotional. I've had this pain all my life. I don't know it. No, it has nothing to do. But this pain is particular. The body doesn't really create, the body does not sit there and say, I want to be in pain. Oh, I don't think I'm going to work. It doesn't do that. It doesn't function that way. Our bodies function optimally. When we do not function optimally, our bodies break down.
100%.
Very quickly, too.
Very quickly. It's amazing how much the muscle gets weak if you're not working it out, like, every day.
You could say things like, I don't want to see so-and-so. And you could feel your feet will not move. Like you're going someplace that you don't want to go to. You could sense that your feet are not moving because you don't want to go. But that message has already come down to your feet. That message is already imprinted, and now your feet are not moving, but you want to go. Because the true statement is, I don't want to go. That's the true state. And so the body responds. The body is much faster in awareness than you are. The body's already responding to your 15 minutes ago feeling cranky. The body's feeling cranky now. Now you have it in your body, it's like, oh, I don't know why that happened. I was fine 5 seconds ago. As soon as I stood up. Have you ever heard of that? My uncle used to do this all the time. As soon as he stood up.
All the time.
As soon as I stood up, that's all I did. It was because I was standing. No, that's normal activity. That should not cause major damage. It's a normal activity, people. So that's what happens. That's the conversation that the psyche is having.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen that in my body for the last few years. I completely agree. And it's powerful. It really is something that you can be mindful of, and even just changing your language, right? Like you both talk about changing your language around things and how they're showing up in your body. Like regular sayings, right? Like, I can't stomach this, or whatever those things are and how they actually show up.
They show up, and they show up so fast. And I would think, Effie, in your, because I read your post about how does it show up in your body somatically, that word somatic. And I think that's the first place to start, of beginning to notice. That's what I see in my practice, is that people aren't asking, well, where does it show up? And then to connect those two dots of what are you telling yourself when it's happening. So say something upsets you, say Ford pulls his tube out and he isn't able to eat that day. Oh my God, this makes me so mad. What's something like you might say, like, it makes me crazy. It gives me a headache. I can't do this. We'll start saying things and put blocks in the way. And then the body literally starts to build that up. So as parents listening, to become aware of that language, what happens when you get activated, if you can notice that. And also maybe Dr. Lahab, you can verify this, and that sometimes that's even asking too much to be aware if there's been too much trauma.
Ooh, that's a really good point, Christy, especially when it's coupled with extreme grief, right? Like life limiting, maybe your kid has already passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've never come to the table with coping skills, or you have no support around you, and you can't be asked to do that.
Yeah.
The angry
That's
voice
true.
inside of you is a cancer. And if it keeps going on, it will kill you. The angry voice cannot stay angry. You cannot keep telling yourself negative things about yourself. It will destroy you, because you're attacking your body. You're attacking the essence of what you are. Your essence is being attacked. Oh, I hate myself. Oh, I'm ugly. This is all my fault. I'm a terrible human being. If I wasn't a terrible human being, this wouldn't happen to me. This is cancerous, right? And we don't need to have radiation. We could stop the cancer by just watching out. Like, be gentle with yourself. Be nice to yourself. You're nice to other people. You're taking care of other people. Do the same thing for self.
That reminds me of that simple exercise you can do of like just looking at your picture of when you were a kid, right?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Looking at yourself when you were 3.
Yes.
Like for me, I have a picture of me bouncing on the trampoline.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how would I ever tell Effie that she is this way when look at her? She's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, to be kind to yourself. And if you need a visual cue, I would strongly recommend they do that. Like a picture when you were playing as a kid, or a picture that you're smiling, or just you're looking out into the world and somebody took a picture of you, dazed and confused. But look at that child and say, you know, that child is still here, and I'm not being kind. You can't be kind to other people when you're hard on yourself. You end up being hard with other people. You don't notice it, but it seeps in. It contaminates everything you do.
Yeah. Or maybe you're just not really feeling anymore. You know, maybe
Well,
you're
yeah.
numb and you have so much compassion fatigue that you're just going through the motions.
Yeah, but going through the motions is not being nice to anybody. You're just doing it. It's out of duty. It's like, well, I have to do it. But that's not out of love. If we're doing it out of love, we have to look at ourselves. We have to. What we're talking about is parents and children. And that relationship, its core, its center is love. It's eros. So that has to flow in both directions. When Eros is flowing in one direction, it stops flowing. It's no longer love. You don't become love. You become a servant, you become a savior, you become, but it's not about love anymore. It's about sacrifice. That's not necessary. It's about love. If we get back to the idea of love, then the sacrifice doesn't seem to take up all the limelight anymore. It's about the relationship. It's about the connection. It's about what I dreamed of and what I want to make happen for you.
Yeah,
And
I love
that's
that.
right. This is about love.
It's such a simple reminder that makes
Yeah.
all the sense.
Well, it's tough, just what you're talking about is tough. Going through that is tough.
Yeah.
Getting off the podcast and going back to your life, it's tough. So I really appreciated, and I think we both have really appreciated your time with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really grateful to be here and just absorb more of your wisdom, the both of you. I know that my community is in desperate need of more resources, not just finding a counselor who maybe knows what they're talking about, because those are almost zero, and getting talk therapy once in a while. This is a bigger and more vast situation, and it's not going to be solved one way. And
Absolutely. We are available at the Institute for Conflict, instituteforconflict@gmail.com, and you can be looked at for the Institute for Conflict. Christy works with us. She's also a partner. We have several people that do different types of things in terms of treatment. They use JAMP, but they have subspecialties in other areas. Like we have naturopaths, we have counselors, we have different people to help. So we are available to help in resolving the trauma. This is what we do. So this
is
we
something
know we could help you with.
Yes. This is something that people can get all remotely, online,
Absolutely.
video, or on the phone.
Yeah.
They don't have to necessarily go in for a physical examination and body treatment. Okay.
No, it's actually it's online. It's face-to-face. The treatment is, most of the paperwork is taken care of via email. Conversations can be had by phone or text. I mean, we're this treatment in particular is, we use certain light and sound, so has been online since day one. So we've been using it in that context. But I think the most important part, and this is my bent, is treating the trauma. Because then you could actually decide what kind of life you want to have. Do you want to sacrifice yourself and sacrifice everything? That's choice, but you're making it out of conscious, embodied feeling state. I'm in my body, I'm in my mind. Okay, this is what I want to do. Okay, this is the path I choose to take. Fine. We're not saying that there's a right path and a wrong path. You want to sacrifice your life? Great, no problem. People do different things. They have different passions. Fantastic. But at least be embodied. Feel okay about you when you make that decision. Don't make it out of pain or grief or shame or dissociation or anger or spite or victimization. You don't have to. That's what we're offering. You can be in your body. You can be embodied. You feel good. you know. So I think Christy would advocate for that. I think that's the core of her work. She's an amazing somatic therapist. She also does the jam treatment. So this is what I mean. We have different specialties. We come from different backgrounds. We focused on different things. We do, all of us know and understand the importance of resolving traumas, because what we've seen is it reverses autoimmune disease. That is huge. The body is self-healing. The body takes care of itself. The body will come back to balance, but we cannot be at war with it. We can't.
Well, and I think that's the magic key, Dr. Lahab, is it becomes, there's that piece again, it becomes so theoretical that I think when someone's in a state of day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute survival, that all it all sounds really lovely and good and just another thing. And with that, what I've noticed with a few people that have done this type of therapy is, and they have come from extreme trauma. None of them specifically, Effie, that I've worked with disability, with children with disabilities. It's a different thing I haven't gone into yet. But what I hear after a few sessions is, oh my God, I think I felt normal today. Whatever normal is, I think I felt it today. And the other thing that I've heard and that I also experienced, which was so crazy, is, oh, I laughed today. I just laughed. And I remember when it was happening after I'd done some sessions with Dr. Lahab, I'm like, oh my God, who is this? Because it wasn't part of what I had experienced within myself. And so I can speak from my experience and the experience of clients that have gone through with pretty severe trauma, that the fact that you might have a normal day, whatever normal is a good sign. They sleep better. Also another piece that's a massive one, versus sleeping with anxiety every night and the body reactivating again and again, and then that loop of never coming out of it. So, and there's some wonderful therapists within Dr. Lahab's circle that I think would be a fit for someone looking for a breath and to clear some of the trauma so it's not consuming them.
Yeah. And even just that day of normalcy, right? That is such a lifeline.
Right?
And that can be maximized, like more so than
that's gold.
People who
For
don't
people
understand.
who live with trauma every day, that's gold. That's
Totally.
That's what Christy's talking about. That's the gold. The gold is like, oh, I laughed. You know, that's the gold. I was able to experience another emotional state that I haven't been able to experience in a long time. Well, there's something wrong when we're not experiencing normal emotional states, when we're not laughing, when we're not, you know, all these should be together. If we're in one way, if we're in one emotional state, we're just hyper alert all the time. That's going to grind. That's going to grind, and then it's going to crash. And then you're going to pick up the pieces from the crash in pain, because your body's going to start feeling pain. Because the grinding and the crashing is going to create this pain. Like you have to do something. You have to change it. The pain is the body's way of telling you, hey, whatever you're doing, it's not good. And the more you do it, the more pain you're in. You're like, I don't know why I'm in so much pain. Well, your body's telling you to stop whatever you're doing. Well, I don't know what I'm doing. Whatever you are doing, right? And that means not taking care of yourself. That's what that means. You're not taking care of
Mhm.
yourself. So your body's telling you, hey, stop. You're going to crash. So when you go through the treatment clears you from crashing. It stops you. It tells you you're tired. It tells you to ask for help.
Oof.
Because you can now.
Yeah.
Because you are not, see, the problem with the trauma also is that it becomes, you're the one who caused the trauma.
Mhm.
You owned it. You took it from the news that somebody gave you, and now you own it. It's your trauma. That's why. And that's the danger. It becomes, I did this to myself. I
All
deserve
that
it.
makes so much sense.
Yeah. So this is trauma. This is the need to resolve trauma because it's an infection. It's a psychic infection.
It is an infection. Yeah.
It's a psychic infection that grows and grows and grows and grows and comes out in clusters. You know,
Yeah.
it comes out in clusters. It'll come out in a cluster today where, you know, my life is not worth living. Tomorrow will come out in the cluster of everything in my life goes wrong. The day after comes where it's like nothing good can come out of this. So there's always this cluster that comes up and it's negative. And that starts to feed off the energy. That starts to feed off your everyday. That becomes an organism that feeds off you. That negativity, that's the trauma.
Yeah. It's a good description, Dr. Lahab.
It
I'm
really
sure that
is.
everyone can relate, some more than others, especially if they're in Effie's shoes.
Yeah.
But everyone has experienced trauma on some level. And I like how you described it's like an infection, because that is so true. And then if not taken care of, that infection spreads.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to see that you have a way out when it grows and grows and grows.
Yeah.
It'll infect
And
the
there is a way
people
out.
in your life. It'll infect the people who you depend on. You will start saying things like, I can't depend on you. You will start like pushing them away, further away. It will create havoc for you. Because this is your negative emotional state. Those who are close to you, those who want to help, become a hindrance. Because you can't think straight. You can't see them for what they are. They're trying to help, and that you're willing to let them help because you need help. You push them away because they're a hindrance. They're going to mess everything up. They don't know what they're doing. Well, it doesn't matter. You need them.
Yeah.
So if somebody helps you, wants to help you, it's okay. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Maybe you could teach them. And that way they'll know what the hell they're doing and they could be around for you. And you won't be alone. You'll have help. So don't be shy about asking for help. It's okay.
Dude, yeah. You have to. You won't make it. You won't make it alone.
And you're not meant to.
No.
Yeah, I didn't want to challenge anybody.
All of us need.
I just wanted to tell them they didn't have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is such a great resource, and I'm excited to share it with my friends in the rare community as another resource, and one I think that should be tapped into for these caregivers, because they're living this life moment to moment, day to day, and they have a really important job.
Absolutely.
Yes, they do.
It's also, it's a fast treatment. You don't need to be in it for years. Our research has shown that you get almost 50% of symptom relief within 12 sessions. And we're thinking this expands over time, and that you actually you could even be symptom free at a certain point, 20, 30 sessions down the road. It doesn't take long to do it. It's 90 minutes. It seems long, but it's not. And the significant change that it causes, hopefully that you would be our person who goes through the treatment for yourself in terms of the trauma that you have had, and can talk about what it means to be free of certain things.
I will share my therapy session with all of you. I will be the guinea pig for the caregivers.
I will. Well, I think it's important voice, because people, say, well, they haven't done it. Why are they talking about it? I've been through it. I talk about my traumas, but Christy's been through it. We all suffer trauma. Being a human being on this planet, you're going to suffer trauma.
Yeah.
There's no way you're not going to suffer trauma. There's always something or someone that could traumatize you, and they will. For whatever reason, they will. So we all suffer trauma. So the question is how do we adapt and heal and move forward? And I think that's what the work that you're doing right now, you're advocating for healing. You're advocating for moving forward. Absolutely. As well as you're advocating for resources, as well as recognition as well. But feeling okay, feeling good should be one of the prerequisites of moving forward. And I think that's what we advocate for, is feeling better.
Yeah.
A better way to move forward. So I look forward to continuing this conversation with you, Effie, and thank you so much for being on our podcast. I think we took a lot of your time, I am sure. Christy, do you have any words for Effie?
Yeah, just thank you, Effie, and so proud of you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Lahab. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you guys for being with me and being through this last part of the noise.
Yeah.
I must have communicated like 50 times to keep it down, but no. Everybody's gonna do their thing. Okay.
It's normal life.
We will see you again on When Destiny Calls. Effie, what's the name of your podcast?
Once Upon a Gene, or you can find me at effieparks.com.
Once Upon a Gene. You could listen to this podcast on Once Upon a Gene or on When Destiny Calls. I would like to thank Effie Parks for her time and wisdom. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everyone.